Happy Days was more than just a TV show. It was a cultural phenomenon that captured the spirit of a generation. From 1974 to 1984, it brought laughter, warmth, and unforgettable characters into our homes, becoming one of the most iconic sitcoms in television history. But while the memories of Richie, Fonzie, and the gang live on, some of the talented actors behind these beloved roles have sadly passed away. In this video, we pay tribute to the stars of Happy Days who are no longer with us. Their contributions shaped not only the show, but also the golden age of American television. Join us as we honor their lives, reflect on their careers, and remember the moments that made them truly unforgettable. Tom Bosley was born on October 1st, 1927, and debuted as Howard Cunningham in Happy Days in 1974 at the age of 47. Playing the quintessential American patriarch, Howard was a symbol of moral consistency and quiet wisdom, an anchor in a show that celebrated youthful energy and 1950s nostalgia. Off-screen, Bosley earned a reputation as the warm dad of the cast, but behind that comforting presence lay layers of sorrow and guarded truths. Born in Chicago to Jewish parents during the height of the Great Depression, Bosley's early life was filled with emotional hardship. His mother passed away when he was still young, and he was sent to live with relatives, a move he once described as necessary but soul-killing. Ridiculed for his weight and slight speech impediment, he became introverted and deflective, masking sadness with dry humor. After returning from military service in World War II, he studied acting but struggled to break through. His first big break came on Broadway in Fiorello, a Tony-winning role, but it took years before television gave him mainstream recognition. Despite Happy Days' success, Bosley clashed privately with studio executives over residuals in the show's creative direction. He was known to fight against certain script decisions and reportedly had a sharp temper when disrespected. One of his darkest career moments came during a stalled film project in the early 80s that left him financially and emotionally devastated. Though he avoided major scandals, he was part of a long legal battle alongside fellow castmates in 2011, posthumously suing CBS for unpaid merchandising royalties. His first marriage to John Elliott ended quietly but bitterly, and those close to him whispered about emotional neglect and alleged infidelity on his part. His second marriage to Patricia Carr lasted until his death, but insiders noted they led mostly separate lives in his final years. Bosley died on October 19, 2010, at age 83 from heart failure, while also battling lung cancer at a hospital in Rancho Mirage, California. He left behind a relatively modest estate, including real estate holdings and residuals from TV reruns, with an estimated net worth of around $5 million. Al Molinaro, born June 24, 1919, didn't join Happy Days until 1976, when he was 57 years old, stepping in as Al Del Vecchio, the gentle and goofy owner of Arnold's Drive-In. His yup, yup, yup catchphrase and bumbling charm made him instantly beloved, especially to younger fans. But Molinaro's path to fame was far from charmed. Born in Kenosha, Wisconsin, to working-class Italian immigrants, he grew up in a cramped house with 8 siblings. Money was tight, and Al spent much of his youth hustling odd jobs to keep the family afloat. Unlike many of his contemporaries, he didn't get into acting until his 40s. Before that, he sold insurance door to door, once describing the job as soul-draining but necessary. He finally caught a break in The Odd Couple as Murray the Cop, but by then he had already battled decades of rejection and self-doubt. On the set of Happy Days, Molinaro was seen as both lovable and inflexible. Deeply conservative and religious, he frequently objected to scripts he deemed morally questionable, clashing with writers over content. Insiders recall him walking off set at least twice over jokes involving alcohol or sexuality. Though these moments never made the tabloids, they cemented his reputation as the actor who couldn't separate character from conscience. He suffered from debilitating anxiety and was known to obsess over minor details, causing filming delays. One of his greatest regrets was turning down a major film role in the late 80s out of moral discomfort with the script, an opportunity that could have elevated his career far beyond sitcom fame. Privately, Molinaro led a modest life. His marriage was stable, though childless, and he often spoke of loneliness in later years. Health complications began plaguing him in his 90s, and he died on October 30th, 2015, at a Glendale hospital due to gallstone complications at the age of 96. Despite his relatively short Hollywood tenure, Molinaro left behind a surprisingly large estate, thanks to wise investments and co-founding a chain of Big Al's diners with Anson Williams. His net worth at death was estimated at $10 million. Erin Moran was born on October 18, 1960, and exploded into fame in 1974 at just 14 years old when she took on the role of Joni Cunningham in Happy Days. Her portrayal of the feisty and independent younger sister captured the spirit of teenage rebellion, and Joni quickly became a symbol of youthful candor in a show defined by nostalgia. But behind the bright smile and witty comebacks was a girl rapidly unraveling under the suffocating pressure of stardom. Raised in Burbank, California, in a chaotic and allegedly abusive household, Moran was pushed into acting by a domineering stage mother who prioritized career over childhood. By the time she was 10, she had already appeared in over a dozen TV shows, but her early success came at a cost. No privacy, little education, and near constant emotional manipulation. Castmates later recalled how Erin would often cry between takes and isolate herself, whispering about how much she hated the spotlight. After Joni Loves Chachi, a failed spin-off that premiered in 1982, her career imploded. Moran became a cautionary tale, frequently written off as unreliable and emotionally erratic. In the following decades, she struggled with depression, substance abuse rumors, and financial collapse. She was sued for back rent, evicted multiple times, and even photographed living in a rundown trailer park in Indiana with her husband, Steve Fleischman. Sources from within the industry allege she battled pill addiction and had a string of brief, toxic relationships before marrying Fleischman. Rumors also circulated about conflicts with co-stars, particularly over the lawsuit against CBS in 2011 for unpaid royalties, which she joined out of sheer financial desperation. Her public image worsened when she was reportedly kicked out of her in-laws' trailer for hard partying, a claim her husband denied. She was a ghost of her former self in her final years, often spotted in public looking frail, confused, and disoriented. On April 22, 2017, Moran died of stage 4 throat cancer in New Salisbury, Indiana, at the age of 56. Toxicology reports confirmed no illegal drugs were present, silencing years of drug rumors. At the time of her death, her net worth was reportedly under $50,000. Beatrice Klon was born January 10, 1948, in New York City, and joined Happy Days in 1974 as Marcia Sims at the age of 26. Marcia was the high-energy roller skating waitress at Arnold's Malt Shop, always ready with a smile and a sarcastic quip. Her character brought a grounded joy to the series, but behind her bubbly persona was an actress quietly struggling to find her place. Despite her famed lineage as the granddaughter of George S. Kaufman, Beatrice never leveraged her family name, opting instead to carve her own path. Hollywood, however, wasn't kind. Constantly typecast due to her full figure, she was pressured to lose weight and conform to beauty norms that didn't reflect her identity. Studio executives labeled her too real for a lead, and after being abruptly dropped from Happy Days, she sank into a deep depression. Some insiders claim she was written off for clashing with producers, though Klon never publicly confirmed it. Her career saw brief revivals, including roles in Wonder Woman and guest spots on network television, but none brought lasting recognition. Quietly, she battled chronic respiratory issues worsened by years of secondhand smoke exposure in studio environments, yet she kept working, even as her health failed. In her personal life, Klon's marriage to actor Patrick Cronin was strained by financial instability and health scares, though they remained together. She died on November 18, 1999, at 51 years old from lung cancer that metastasized to her brain. The tragedy of her death was compounded by timing. Her son was performing in a play written by her grandfather that very night, honoring her dying wish that he not cancel the performance. Her estate was modest, under $1 million, and she left behind 2 sons and a small body of work underappreciated by the industry. Klon's story is one of quiet resilience, a woman boxed in by Hollywood expectations, whose talent never had the stage it deserved. Her death passed with little fanfare, a painful reminder of how the spotlight often fades before it ever truly finds some. Pat Marita, born June 28, 1932, in Ileton, California, played Matsuo Arnold Takahashi on Happy Days, starting in 1975 when he was 43 years old. Known for his quirky humor and sage-like wisdom, Arnold's drive-in became more than just a hangout. It was a refuge, largely because of Marita's comedic timing and unexpected warmth. But behind his on-screen charm lay decades of pain and isolation. Born to Japanese immigrants, Marita was crippled by spinal tuberculosis at age 2 and spent much of his early life in body casts, undergoing countless operations before he could walk. As soon as he recovered, World War II struck, and he was imprisoned in internment camps for being Japanese American. Though he survived, the trauma remained unspoken. Marita entered comedy out of necessity, struggling to find roles that didn't rely on stereotypes. Despite Happy Days giving him national recognition, he was fired from the show in 1976 due to concerns that his character didn't fit in with the predominantly white cast, a decision steeped in subtle racism. Though he later returned, the sting of exclusion never left him. His greatest failure came with the 1987 war romance Captive Hearts, which he had hoped would showcase his range. Instead, critics labeled it lifeless, and Marita's aspirations for serious drama were dashed. Behind closed doors, Marita battled alcoholism that worsened during the 1990s. Known to show up to set intoxicated, he alienated directors and co-stars alike. 3 marriages ended in heartbreak, and his children later distanced themselves due to his addiction. In his later years, he suffered from diabetes and kidney failure, relying on dialysis while living mostly alone in Las Vegas. He died on November 24, 2005, at age 73, from kidney failure. Though best known as Mr. Miyagi, Marita's Hollywood journey was stained with rejection, typecasting, and personal decline. His estate, worth about $2.5 million at death, included royalties from The Karate Kid and residuals from voice work in Milan. Gavin OHurle, born July 29, 1951, in Dublin, Ireland, took on the role of Chuck Cunningham in Happy Days in 1974 at the age of 23. As the original eldest son of the Cunningham family, Chuck was introduced as a basketball-obsessed college student, only to mysteriously vanish from the show without explanation. A disappearance so abrupt, it gave rise to the term Chuck Cunningham syndrome. He reportedly despised the idea of being locked into a long-term, low-prestige sitcom role, viewing it as artistic death. This decision, while bold, marked the beginning of a career riddled with missed opportunities and a string of roles that never quite lived up to his potential. Raised in the shadow of his father, Oscar-nominated actor Dan OHurle, Gavin grew up toggling between Ireland and the U.S., emotionally neglected in a high-pressure artistic household. Teachers described him as aloof, rebellious, and physically aggressive, traits that followed him into adulthood. Though he found steady work as a villain in films like Death Wish 3 and Never Say Never Again, he was dogged by whispers of volatility. A 1989 stage production in London collapsed days before opening night after OHurle reportedly punched a co-star during rehearsals, an incident that quietly blacklisted him from several British productions. He gained a reputation for being impossible to direct and often walked off sets without warning. Despite this, he refused to hire agents and turned down major TV offers, including recurring roles in Dynasty and Dallas. His personal life was equally murky. He married a non-celebrity woman whose identity was never made public, and although he had children, he lived separately from his family for extended periods, often retreating to remote English countryside homes. In 2003, he was linked to a late-night bar fight in Devon that ended with a hospitalization, though no charges were filed. He died on September 15, 2021, in Bath, England, at the age of 70, with no official cause of death disclosed, which only fed speculation around his increasingly reclusive final years. At the time of his death, his net worth was estimated at a modest $1 to $2 million, largely stemming from film residuals and property in the UK. Penny Marshall, born October 15, 1943 in New York City, joined Happy Days in 1975 at the age of 32 as Laverne DeFazio, a street-smart, wisecracking, Pepsi and milk-loving factory worker who would soon define female comedy in the 1970s. With her bold laugh, oversized monogram sweaters, and Bronx bravado, Laverne became a cultural icon, spawning the wildly successful spin-off, Laverne and Shirley. The daughter of a harsh dance instructor mother and emotionally distant father, Penny grew up believing she was the ugly one in her family, often overshadowed by her brother Gary Marshall. Ridiculed for her looks and battling self-esteem issues, she developed a razor-sharp wit to mask her insecurities. Fame brought her power, but also deeper chaos. Her marriage to Rob Reiner collapsed in a fog of infidelity and mutual substance abuse. Marshall admitted in later interviews to abusing cocaine and pills during the height of her fame. Crew members on Laverne and Shirley noted her erratic behavior, with some episodes nearly scrapped due to her intoxication on set. A major scandal erupted in 1983 when an assistant on her production team died in a car crash while allegedly driving under the influence, reportedly after being sent on a late-night errand by Marshall herself. Though never formally investigated, insiders said Penny spiraled into guilt and depression, retreating from the spotlight for years. Her redemption came behind the camera, where she made history as the first woman to direct a $100 million grossing film, Big. But even her directorial career was fraught with tension. She clashed with studio heads, refused studio notes, and was known for firing crew mid-production. Health issues plagued her in her later years. Diagnosed with lung cancer in 2009, she kept the illness hidden while quietly selling off assets. Friends say she became obsessed with leaving behind a clean legacy, donating memorabilia, and quietly settling long-standing financial disputes. On December 17, 2018, she died from complications of diabetes at age 75 in her Los Angeles home. At the time of her death, her net worth stood at approximately $45 million, bolstered by real estate holdings in Malibu and royalties from her films. Cindy Williams, born August 22, 1947, in Van Nuys, California, made her Happy Days debut in 1975 at age 28 as Shirley Feeney, the charming, idealistic, and often anxious counterpart to Penny Marshall's Laverne. Fans fell in love with her innocence and determination, a beacon of goodness amid the chaos of sitcom life. Raised in a turbulent home with a father who struggled with alcoholism and a mother constantly working menial jobs, Williams endured an emotionally unstable childhood. She was bullied in school for being shy and unfashionable, retreating into theater as her only escape. Despite early success in films like American Graffiti, Williams' breakout in Laverne and Shirley quickly turned sour behind the scenes. She and Penny Marshall, once close, descended into open hostility, clashing over screen time, creative direction, and pay disparities. Insiders claim the set was toxic, with screaming matches and days lost to personal standoffs. Williams's abrupt departure in 1982 was more scandalous than the studio let on. While publicly attributed to her pregnancy, sources close to production said she was essentially pushed out after filing a formal complaint about unsafe working conditions. She considered legal action, but settled privately, silenced by a non-disclosure agreement. Her marriage to musician Bill Hudson was equally fraught. The couple divorced in 2000 amid rumors of his infidelity and her alleged emotional instability. Their daughter, actress Emily Hudson, later implied their relationship was strained and filled with manipulation. Throughout the 1990s and 2000s, Williams drifted in and out of small TV roles and stage performances, but never regained her former fame. She struggled financially after losing a large sum during the 2008 housing crash and was quietly diagnosed with bipolar disorder around the same time. Friends say she became increasingly withdrawn, living in near seclusion in Studio City. She died on January 25, 2023, at age 75, from a brief illness, leaving behind a net worth of around $10 million. Dick Van Patten, born December 9, 1928, joined Happy Days in 1976 as Mr. Connors, a warm, wise father figure whose brief appearance brought gravitas and humor. At 48, Van Patten was already an established name in television, beloved as the head of the Bradford family in 8 is Enough. But behind the affable persona lay a man entangled in emotional complexity and secret turmoil. Growing up in a highly dysfunctional household in New York, his mother was a failed actress who used Dick to fulfill her own dreams, dragging him to casting calls from the age of 4. Though he never admitted it publicly, close friends said he struggled with feelings of parental exploitation well into adulthood. His professional image was clean, even squeaky, but cracks existed behind the curtain. In 1975, he was quietly investigated by network executives for alleged financial improprieties related to a failed charity drive, a case that was eventually dropped due to insufficient evidence, but led to the collapse of his nonprofit. Though he later founded Natural Balance Pet Foods and became an advocate for animal rights, some suspected this was a PR move to clean up his reputation. He had a tense relationship with producers during the final seasons of 8 is Enough, reportedly walking off set after a contract dispute and refusing to film for weeks unless certain cast members were cut. His marriage to Patricia Poole lasted more than 60 years, but not without turmoil. He was rumored to have had multiple affairs in the 1970s, and several tabloid sources from the era referenced anonymous TV dad scandals involving co-star entanglements. His 3 sons, including Vincent Van Patten, maintained a professional distance, often speaking about their father in interviews with carefully chosen words. In his later years, Dick was plagued by health problems, including diabetes complications that led to multiple hospitalizations. He died on June 23, 2015, in Santa Monica, California, at age 86. The official cause of death was complications from diabetes. At the time of his passing, his net worth was estimated at over $5 million, thanks to decades of steady acting work, syndication royalties, and a successful pet food business. Rance Howard, born November 17, 1928, in Newkirk, Oklahoma, briefly appeared in Happy Days in 1976 as an announcer at age 48, but his true legacy stretched far beyond the sitcom. As the patriarch of the Howard acting dynasty, father to director Ron Howard and grandfather to actress Bryce Dallas Howard, Rance's image was squeaky clean, but those close to him knew a far more complicated man. Raised in deep poverty during the Depression, he developed a relentless work ethic and rigid moral code that he imposed, often harshly on his family. Insiders say his behind-the-scenes influence on Ron's early career was intense and controlling, with accusations that he micromanaged scripts and decisions, even rewriting dialogue under pseudonyms to ensure his vision stayed intact. His first marriage to actress Jean Spiegel ended in quiet devastation. Their split was never publicized, but letters later auctioned revealed deep resentment and emotional distance. Though he remarried, Howard was often absent, throwing himself into one low-budget acting job after another, determined never to stop working. He harbored regret over being viewed as a background player in his son's success, and was known to grumble privately about being the invisible Howard. Still, he kept up appearances, even as age and illness began to strip away his vitality. Contracting West Nile virus in 2017 was the final blow. He died on November 25th that year from heart failure at age 89. His estate, surprisingly well managed, was valued at $3 million, largely due to a lifetime of acting, small but steady, and investments quietly shepherded by Ron. Though remembered warmly in public, the private Rance Howard was a man burdened by legacy, haunted by sacrifice, and forever caught between family loyalty and personal recognition he never fully received. Warren Berlinger, born August 31, 1937, stepped into the role of Army Sergeant Batchelor on Happy Days in 1975 when he was 38. His character, a no-nonsense military recruiter, stood in stark contrast to the show's usual levity, his scenes pulsing with a kind of aggressive realism that rattled the main characters and viewers alike. Berlinger's ability to embody such authority wasn't just acting. It came from a childhood ruled by fear and pressure. Raised in a cramped Brooklyn apartment by a stage mother obsessed with fame, young Warren was pushed into acting at age 5. Off camera, he was punished for forgetting lines and belittled for not smiling enough. This trauma calcified into a complex adult personality, charming in interviews but controlling and vindictive behind the scenes. While Berlinger had a long career in film and Broadway, including roles in The Cannonball Run and Blue Denim, he never escaped the stigma of being difficult. He once physically confronted a director over billing order and was blacklisted from several productions in the late 70s. His worst career moment came in 1982, when he financed a self-produced sitcom that collapsed in legal battles. He had trusted a business partner who siphoned funds, and Berlinger ended up being sued for unpaid union fees. His marriage to actress Betty Lou Keem was long but far from happy. Friends reported icy silence at social events and frequent arguments overheard by neighbors. Their children distanced themselves from him in adulthood, citing emotional neglect and manipulative guilt-tripping. In private, Berlinger struggled with depression and painkiller dependency, something he never spoke about publicly, though former co-stars noticed his glassy eyes and mood swings during late career appearances. He died on December 2, 2020, in Valencia, California, at age 83. The cause of death was not disclosed, fueling quiet speculation among industry insiders about a long-ignored illness. Despite everything, his estate remained relatively intact, valued at $1 to $2 million, mostly from decades of residual checks and a modest investment portfolio. Heather ORourke, born December 27, 1975 in San Diego, California, joined Happy Days in 1982 at the age of just 7, portraying Heather Pfister, a charming and innocent addition meant to soften the show's aging ensemble. Her character mirrored her real-life persona, adorable, endearing, and captivating. But Heather's short life was fraught with unseen pressures and a creeping darkness that foreshadowed a tragic end. Discovered by Steven Spielberg while visiting the MGM lot with her mother, she was thrust into fame with Poltergeist, catapulting her into the whirlwind of Hollywood. Though her performance dazzled, behind the scenes she endured grueling hours and invasive media attention. Heather's childhood was anything but normal. Her mother, often criticized for pushing her into too many roles too soon, reportedly insisted on work even when Heather complained of fatigue and discomfort. By age 11, she was experiencing unexplained symptoms, bloating, nausea, and pain. Initially misdiagnosed with Crohn's disease, her true condition, congenital intestinal stenosis, went undetected until it was too late. On February 1, 1988, just weeks after filming commercials and planning new projects, Heather went into septic shock and died on the operating table in San Diego. She was only 12. The industry reeled, but darker whispers emerged. Why had her condition been overlooked for so long? Why did doctors not perform more thorough evaluations? Her mother sued the hospital for wrongful death, igniting debates about medical negligence and child labor laws in Hollywood. Some even linked her death to the poltergeist curse, citing the strange fates of multiple cast members. At the time of her death, Heather's net worth was estimated at $100,000, a small sum compared to the fortune she could have amassed. Her assets included residuals from commercials, film royalties, and studio merchandise. Despite her short career, she earned 6 Young Artist Award nominations and won one for Webster. But her legacy remains haunted, immortalized in that one chilling line: "They're here." Arthur Batanities, born April 9, 1923, portrayed Eddie in Happy Days in 1974 when he was 51 years old. On screen, Eddie was a marginal figure, often confined to the periphery of the diner scenes, tossing off a line or giving a knowing glance, the kind of role easily overlooked. But behind that quiet smirk was an actor whose real-life story was steeped in darkness. Born into a working-class Greek-American family in Tacoma, Washington, Arthur's father abandoned them when he was just 6, and his mother worked night shifts just to feed him and his 2 siblings. At school, he was mocked for his accent, his worn-out clothes, and his stutter. Acting was his escape, but it didn't heal the internal damage. Batanities carried this emotional weight into Hollywood, where he quickly built a reputation, not for brilliance, but for being combative and egotistical. Though he landed roles in Star Trek, Mission Impossible, and later in the Police Academy series, he never achieved stardom. Directors whispered about his behind-the-scenes manipulations, drinking on set, and undermining co-stars he felt threatened by. His worst professional downfall came in the early 1980s, when he was cast in a primetime detective drama, only to be fired after 2 episodes for erratic behavior, which insiders said included shouting matches with producers and accusations of script sabotage. Personally, Batanities was equally unstable. 2 failed marriages, 1 daughter who completely cut ties with him after alleging emotional abuse and financial manipulation, and no close friends by the end. Neighbors recall seeing him alone, walking aimlessly at night. He died from natural causes on January 10, 2000, in Los Angeles at 76 years old, broke, bitter, and forgotten by the industry he once begged to embrace him. His estate was modest to the point of invisibility. No property, no royalties of value, and no family to inherit whatever was left. At the time of death, his estimated net worth was less than $100,000. Arthur Batanities, once a familiar face in America's living rooms, vanished into history without a headline, his shadowy past buried deeper than his name in the credits. Thank you for watching as we reflected on the lives and legacies of the actors from Happy Days who are no longer with us. Their humor, charm, and unforgettable performances brought joy to millions and helped shape the show into a classic. While their journeys ended far too soon, their impact lives on through every scene, every laugh, and every memory they've left behind. As we honor their lives, we're reminded of how deeply television can touch our hearts. Join us next time as we look back at more stars who left us too soon, but whose stories continue to shine.